In episode 4, it's the day after Logan dies, and everybody is meeting at his house. This includes a lot of people that honestly don't really matter, but they all give their condolences when Kendall shows up. Kendall is pretty surprised, though, because when he entered the house, one of the first people that he saw was Marcia. He just never expected to see her again, but yet here she is, claiming that her and Logan were still really close and talked every single night. When Kendall finally meets up with Shiv and Roman, he asks, what's up with Marcia? And by the way, where's Carrie? And Marcia has demanded that Carrie not show up. They then segue into talking about how everyone's doing. Roman's probably doing the best, and he thinks the reason why is because he's thought about his dad dying so much that he feels like he's already pre-grieved. But this isn't just going to be a grieving session. They're not all there to mourn the loss of Logan Roy. The board is meeting at 11 to decide the future of the company. It could go to one of the kids, or it could go to one of the old guard, who are also at Logan's house. This includes Jerry, Hugo, Tom, Carl, and Frank. This old guard goes and meets privately to discuss who they think they should nominate if the board were to take their advice. They discuss Jerry because she's done it before. They also discuss Carl because he has a little bit of experience as well, and he didn't get his shot. And Tom even throws his name into the ring, although that would probably be a bad look, because as Carl lays out, the narrative right now is he's a clumsy interloper that no one trusts. The only guy pulling for him is now dead, and now he's really just married to the guy's daughter who also hates him. So it's likely not going to be Tom at the top. There's also another issue that Frank hasn't discussed with anybody. It's a note that he found in Logan's safe. He reads it, and it's some wishes that Logan wanted upon his death. Most of them are typed out, but then there's some addendums written in pencil. It seems like Logan just didn't send this to his lawyer. But the one addendum is that he wants Kendall Roy to run the company. It appears, though, that this note was written about 4 years ago, when Kendall and his dad were in good standing. And it looks like his name was underlined, although it could be interpreted as his name was crossed out. Now, since Frank found this, he could just dispose of it and not let anybody know about it, and then the vote goes to the board and they decide that way. Or they could honor the old man's wishes, although it's unclear what those wishes are. Frank wants some input, so he shows Carl the note, and Carl thinks they should get rid of it. And then Jerry walks in, and they show Jerry the note. What they decide to do is to tell the kids about it. Now, the kids are busy trying to get a hold of Madsen. Madsen had called, and Kendall told Roman, hey, don't answer the phone call. Let's get our ducks in a row first. When they called him back, Madsen didn't answer. His assistant did, and he tells them that Madsen isn't available. It seems like Madsen took it as a slight when the phone wasn't answered the first time, and he thought it was a power play. So this phone conversation between the kids and this Oscar fella ends up being a giant pissing contest that goes nowhere. They tell this Oscar fella that it actually is coming at a really good time. Madsen isn't available. It gives them time to pick a new leader of the company, and then they can complete the deal. But Oscar says, now, we don't want to lose momentum. Could one of you guys be here in like 24 hours to do this? And Shiv pops on and says, I'm sorry, but our dad just died. We have the election coming up. I mean, can you come to the States? But Oscar points out that Lucas is going to something called the annual retreat. It's annual. They can't just drop this thing. It's once a year. So they don't really get anywhere in this phone call. But after all, they didn't actually speak to Madsen. The trio then decides to kill some time in between the board vote, and that's when Connor shows up. Connor was really smart. He was able to talk Marcia into selling him the condo. So while the three kids are going to be worried about the board, Connor's just going to be worried about drapes, carpets, remodeling, things like that. They then get interrupted by Hugo. He first asked to speak to Ken alone because he found out that his daughter, who he claims he isn't close to, sold a whole bunch of the company's stock right before the announcement got made that Logan died. He swears that he barely talks to this girl, although when he's questioned about if the phone records will say that he did talk to her, he's not quite sure. But he just wanted to tip off Kendall that there might be a bit of insider trading going on that he wasn't aware of. They then get word that the old guard wants to meet with them in the library. As Kendall is making his way there, Tom intercepts him, and he starts kissing his ass a little bit, saying that, yeah, they've had their differences, but he's always respected him, and he's, quote, here to serve. And Ken kind of chuckles and says, Tom, I always liked you. I wish you well. And then he goes into the library. Frank shows the kids the letter, and it comes as a real big surprise to Ken, who never really thought that his father liked him, and he always figured that he was a disappointment to his father. But here's a letter saying that he was supposed to take over the company. Although, when Shiv looks closer, she says, I don't know if that's an underline or if his name's crossed out. That's kind of fudgy. And there's no legal backing on this. It wasn't sent to his lawyer. It wasn't in his will. It's just a note that you found in the safe. Kendall, though, can't get over the fact that his name is on this piece of paper, even though counterpoints are brought up, like the fact that it was written a long time ago. He doesn't hear any of that. Shiv, though, points out that it doesn't really matter who's in charge of the company. It's the board who will choose, and everybody still wants the sale to go through. So really, this is a title in name only for a couple of months, because whoever the board chooses is expected to sell the company. But that doesn't mean that Kendall doesn't want to be in charge. This is what he's wanted his entire life, and now he's got a chance to get it. Tom then interrupts everybody and tells them that Marcia wants everyone to know Ron Perkis is about to make an announcement downstairs. So everybody in the room basically leaves except Ken and Frank. He confides in Frank that he never expected this because he always thought his dad kind of hated him, and Frank tries to make him feel better, saying that that's just how Logan was, but he did care about him. Ken starts to process all of this, and then he finally looks up at Frank and says, if I can get them behind me, will you follow? And Frank asks, do you really want back in? I mean, you seem so well. But yeah, he absolutely wants back in. The question is, can he get Roman and Shiv to back him? Because everybody kind of wants to be the top dog. Roman would love to be top dog, and he does know that his dad was kind of grooming him towards the end. And Shiv would also like to be top dog. But Shiv is arguably having the toughest time with her dad dying. She's standing on the stairwell and Tom walks up, and at first she's her combative self, but then she opens up a little bit that she feels like they killed their dad. That they're forcing him to go and meet with Madsen, putting him on the plane, ultimately resulted in him dying, not being able to be saved because he was 20,000 feet up in the air. Tom tries his best to make Shiv feel better, but it doesn't work. The kids all then reconvene and they notice that there are police dogs in the house, and they're kind of confused on why there are police dogs, and Marcia informs them that it's because presidential nominee Jared Mencken is en route, and Shiv doesn't want him showing up. But Roman points out, we probably should align with this guy. There's a pretty good chance he's going to be president soon, so it would kind of be in our best interest. But Shiv cannot stand this dude. They then stop arguing because they hear Ron Perkis start clanking glasses and start making an announcement. Everybody's kind of making fun of Ron as he makes this announcement. The kids are doing the exact same thing. They then, though, get condolences because Sandy and Stewie have shown up. They showed up to pay their respects, but they also showed up because they have a board vote, and the board vote is coming up. When Ken sees that the older Sandy has also arrived, he starts subtly making his pitch to the older Sandy on why he should be the one to take over the company. Sandy, and Stewie aren't the only late arrivals, though. Carrie, even though she was asked not to, shows up, and Marcia tries kicking her out. Carrie explains that she's got some stuff upstairs that she wants to get to, and she tries getting upstairs, but security stops her. Marcia is super, super cold to Carrie, which is kind of understandable, and even Roman thinks that Marcia was a bit too harsh. Roman walks back in to hear the Perkis speech, but Tom intercepts him. After he struck out with Kendall, he feels like maybe he can get in good with Roman. Roman, though, sees right through it and immediately starts mocking Tom for this. Meanwhile, Kendall has continued to make the rounds, trying to make his pitch, and this time it's to Stewie. Stewie's pretty taken aback that a day after his dad died, Kendall is already campaigning to get the job. And he also points out that the last time he went with Ken, it didn't go great for him. But Ken brings up the letter that his dad wrote and guarantees that this time it will be different, but he needs Stewie by his side with the board vote. Stewie asks him, what's in it for me, Ken? And Ken says, I don't know, do a solid for your oldest pal the day after his dad died? Stewie agrees, and now Ken just has to work on Roman and Shiv. They're busy kind of just chit-chatting about BS, and Ken finally freaks out at them and says, "Can we please talk about this situation? The board vote is coming up." So he's finally able to get Shiv and Roman alone. Kendall makes his case on why it should be him. Shiv kind of points out why it should be her. Roman points out why it should be him. But at the end of it, Roman and Ken team up, saying that it should be them to lead the way. They would like to include Shiv, but three's a crowd. It's too many people. They promise Shiv that they will not screw her over on this, that she will have an input, she will have say. They actually promise on their dad that they will not screw her over, but she's still a little weary of that. Ken reminds her that this will only be for a little bit. They'll do the deal, they'll spin ATN, they fold in Pierce. 6 months, 8 months tops, and all of this is equal. The three of them, even though only Roman and Ken are at the forefront. Shiv reluctantly agrees, and the three of them then go talk to the old guard. They make their pitch on why it should be Roman and Ken, and the old guard pushes back a little bit. They point out that it should be one of them, but ultimately they side with the kids. So when the board votes, they vote that Ken and Roman will take over the company. Now Carolina has to draft a statement. She grabs Hugo and they start working on it, but there is a slight issue. They don't know how to word it, so they're going to have to grab Roman and Ken and figure out what they want it to say. They're still kind of taking it all in and celebrating. Shiv, she stormed right out of there. She was not happy. As she's walking out, she actually slips and falls. Normally this wouldn't be a big deal, but she's been hiding something. Shiv is pregnant. She hasn't even told Tom yet. And even though Tom doesn't know this, he rushes to make sure that she's okay, but she stands up and assures everybody, "I'm fine, get away from me." And she leaves. Meanwhile, down the hall, Carolina and Hugo have grabbed both Roman and Ken, and they want to know how exactly they want this statement framed. The statement's going to be really important because when the markets open up, they don't want the stock to crash. Now, there's two ways this statement could go. The first one is to point out the close relationship that Kendall and Roman had with Logan, making it look like these two were Logan's choice. The second option is to paint Logan as nothing more than a face, a guy that wasn't making any decisions and that whose health really prohibited him from running the company. He was in charge in name only. Roman takes the second option really personally. He doesn't want to bury Logan before the body's even cold. Kendall looks at Roman and agrees with him, saying, "Yeah, our dad just died. We probably shouldn't crap all over him." Roman, though, is so insulted that he tells both Carolina and Hugo, "Don't ever bring me this crap again," and he leaves. Ken, though, has other feelings. He goes to the bathroom and he just starts looking at his name written down on this piece of paper. Crossed out, underlined, he can't tell. But he feels like Roman was wrong. He walks back in and tells Hugo, "Hey, all that bad stuff about my dad, it's what he would do. He'd want this for the firm. So action that, but softly. Don't leave any fingerprints." Hugo's a little hesitant to do that, and he asks, "Can I get a sign-off from Carolina and Roman?" But Ken says no. This is on the down low. Just get on it. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry. It'll be up in a day or two.